Riddle me this. How do we go from this
I'm gonna split you in two. No, you die.
to this?
So get all this for one low price, for easy payment. It sure sounds nice.
From the prime time, bitch.
Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video here on the channel. So for the last couple of days, I wanted to do something a little bit fun and a little bit niche. Now I know there are videos covering this topic floating around on the YouTubes, but I want to talk about it because it's something that's fascinated me ever since my mum first told me about Freddy Krueger. And that is the wacky world of Freddy Krueger merchandise. And like I said in that cold open, how do we go from a dark, disgusting, but also at times funny, twisted with a sense of humor individual or an entity that haunts you in your dreams with a really gnarly design to something that becomes cute and cuddly with yo-yos and squeaky toys and dolls and pajamas at one point, just insane stuff. Now, for the most part, with this video, I'm going to be covering the Freddy Krueger merchandise from the 1980s and the 1990s. Like, in comparison to now, we have a lot more refined, more high quality merchandise that makes sense, you know, really high-end action figures, detailed stuff. We have very talented independent artists creating some beautiful work. We have the original artists that worked on the films offering some beautiful work. But going back to the 80s, most notably 1989 and 1990, when Freddy really took off. Like, Freddy-mania was just at its absolute peak, because by then we had the Dream Child where Freddy was nearly at his full transformation of being a Looney Tune. We also had Freddy's Nightmares going on. So it was a time to be alive, and I can only imagine how insane it would have been and how fun it would have been for Robert Englund to be in amongst that. And like Bob Shaye said, Robert was just whoring it up, just having an absolute time and just making the most of it, because again, it was at its peak for the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Now, before I start with the particular pieces of merchandise I'm going to be touching on, I just want to do some honorable mentions for the pieces of merchandise that really stood out to me. And of course, they're from the 90s, well, with the exception of one thing. I think that's actually from the late 80s. I'll have to double check. But starting with the horror headliners line. So these were like static bobbleheads. They look like bobbleheads, but their heads didn't bobble. And I had the Freddy Krueger version. Now, this came in a full line where you could get Leatherface, Ghostface, Jason, Freddy, and Michael Myers. And I remember my dad bought this for me because I figured this is the closest I could ever get to owning a high-end Freddy Krueger action figure, even though the dimensions and the aesthetic are completely off. But you look on the back, and there was a certificate of authenticity. And as soon as I got this thing, I took it out of the packaging and was throwing it around and pretending I was Freddy and this is my little Freddy helper. But it had a certificate of authenticity limited to 10,000. At first, in hindsight, I should have kept it in the box, but you look on eBay now and they fetch for like 40 to 60 bucks. So it's fine. Next up is the Nightmare on Elm Street PC game. This is a Nightmare on Elm Street game that I wouldn't say is forgotten about, but not a lot of people talk about it as opposed to the NES game, which I'll touch on. This particular game revolves around the characters of A Nightmare on Elm Street 3. So you've got like Will, Kincaid, Kristen, Taryn, you're running around Springwood, and then Freddy eventually comes and gets you. And I remember playing this on PC back in the day. Neighbors brought it over and it took forever to install, boot up on our bloody rickety old computer, but I had an absolute blast and I was scared shitless. But you look at this like old school GTA style bird's eye view and you're in Springwood and Freddy eventually comes and grabs you. Now I know these are a dime a dozen now and mass produced, but the OG Freddy Krueger gloves, the plastic ones. But I didn't get the officially licensed one. No. Here in Australia, we had the Fright Glove, which featured Satan on the packaging brandishing a Freddy Krueger glove. I remember when I first laid eyes on this thing at my local costume store, literally the next suburb over, and I instantly just fell in love with it. Mum bought it for me, and it was my pride and joy for so many years. Until, you know, a few years later, I had a few upgrades. All right, so let's get into the wacky merchandise of Freddy Krueger. So when the first Nightmare on Elm Street came out, it was a huge success, but Freddy wasn't exactly marketable as a hero, a leading man, someone kids could look up to. You think about the backstory of Fred Krueger. He's a child killer with some more undertones going on. They're a bit more spurious that delve into the predatory realm that Wes Craven initially decided to sidestep just because there were things going on at the time in the United States that he didn't want to draw attention to. So they just made Freddy a child killer. By the time Elm Street 2 rolled around, Freddy was definitely a household name, but it was more or less Dream Warriors that really solidified Freddy as a hero, someone you want to root for, even though he's the antagonist in the film. So in 1987, that is when Freddy merchandise started to kick off, and we kicked things off with some wearable stuff. We had the first officially licensed Freddy Krueger mask from Dom Post Studios. Now, for a long time after that, this was the main go-to mass-produced mask. And I can only imagine the hype around this at the time because it featured a snarling Freddy with teeth. Not only that, company Collegeville also made a Freddy Krueger wearable mask, and you know, like a half vacuum form mask, but also a sweater that just looked like a plastic tarp you put over yourself if it was bloody raining. A few years later, Collegeville would also make the Freddy Krueger makeup kit, and I remember seeing this years ago, and I absolutely wanted this so bad. So much so, I've seen a few unboxing videos of it now of people buying them today, and holy shit, like the quality is questionable, but back then, that's all we had. And that's all you could gain access to if you wanted to be Freddy Krueger, apart from slapping latex on your face. Now, I had a look at a few eBay listings of the original 1987 Dom Post mask. You can see right here, it varies from in pretty decent condition to absolute abysmal condition. And if you get the set with the foam fedora and the glove, it actually fetches a pretty penny. Even the squashed and pretty poor condition versions fetch an okay penny. I mean, it's a high asking price, but there is someone out there that will want this, considering it still has the original Dom Post tag. Now, this is a photo I had never seen before until recently. One of the first iterations of a mass-produced Freddy Krueger glove, if you could call it that. It looks like Catwoman's claws from Batman Returns with an old lady gardening glove. Like very reminiscent of like the old floral gardening gloves I used to use on my first gloves back in the day in like 2001, 2002. Now what's interesting is it says Collegeville, but it looks like the Dom Post Studios mask. So I'm not sure what's going on there, whether Collegeville offered the Dom Post mask, but also with the glove as well. From $4.97, but also the mask, and I'm assuming the fedora as well as like a set, is $17.77. Absolute bargain and a half. Actually, no, that's pretty expensive for back then. Next up, we have action figures / dolls, and we had a talking Freddy Krueger. This is the epitome of being so far removed of what the original iteration of Fred Krueger was all about. A cuddly, cute, talking Freddy that you could snuggle up to in bed at night. But not only that, we had the Max Effects Freddy Krueger set where you had the character of Max, Max Effects, I don't know what that's all about, and you had all the pieces for him to become Freddy Krueger. Again, this was on my list back in the day. These fetch a pretty penny as well as the talking Freddy Krueger dolls, especially if they are in pristine condition. Now this is where we're getting into wackiness at its finest. Freddy Krueger board games, Freddy Krueger games. So we had the NES game that if you've watched the Angry Video Game Nerd, he does an absolute ripper of a video covering the gameplay of that. It is so far removed from what Nightmare on Elm Street's all about, even though it does have a horror theme in it. You've also got the board game, which, like a lot of these pieces, fetches a real pretty penny. I have no idea what the rules are with the board game, but apparently it's a collector's item and it's a hot commodity. Moving along and really showcasing the late 80s, early 90s, Freddy Krueger yo-yos. Now obviously I wasn't old enough to remember Freddy Krueger yo-yos, but my yo-yo for me, if you guys remember, was the Brain in the 90s. So I can only imagine how amazing a Freddy Krueger yo-yo would have been. Again, it's just a cash cow at its finest for the Elm Street franchise. Now at this point, this was 1989 to 1990, again, because we had Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, which really amped up Freddy's personality and wackiness, but also Freddy's nightmares. Now, going back to Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, Robert Englund did a bunch of VHS promos back in the day, which are just an absolute delight to see. These things were essentially sent out to video store owners, retailers and stuff like that, just to kind of sell the idea of having a Nightmare on Elm Street in their store, and also the video standees and stuff like that. So check this out.
MTV and ads in prime youth market magazines like Rolling Stone. Us coming soon from Media Home Entertainment.
When?
Well, soon.
What do you mean, soon? Pay attention, larva breath. Now, order date is July 16th. National release date is... Are you listening?
Your history. Nightmare 4 hits video this December with the ultimate holiday party tape. But hey, what's a party without some tunes? I got national trade and consumer ads. The holiday spirit. Yes, Virginia, there is a Sandy Claus.
It's just wackiness at its finest. Now, I've played this clip that you're about to see before when I did a video with Frank and Darren, the Slaughtered Lamb movie podcast, about our stupidest, goofiest Freddy Krueger moments. This doesn't feature Robert Englund per se. This is just someone in the mass-produced mask, but it's also just showcasing the board game, the mask, and various other pieces of Elm Street merchandise.
You know my face. You know my name. Now get my tape and buy my game. You'll want the mask. You'll need the glove. The poster and book are what you'll love. So get all this for one low price. For easy payments. It sure sounds nice. So listen up on where to call. 'Cause if you don't, I'll get you all.
To order the Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Package by credit card, call 254-9200. That's 254-9200. Call now.
One piece that really stood out to me, and I can't believe it's a thing, like it's a concept and a half, Freddy's Fright Squirter. I swear that's now a category on Pornhub. Would not be surprised. But again, who'd have thought Fred Krueger, you know, the child murderer, let's make it a squeaky little water squirter. Actually, they probably saw this shot from the Dream Child and they're like, yes, that's it. Now, at one point they released a vinyl, Freddy's Greatest Hits, that included doing the Freddy. Like very much like Do the Bartman. It's just perfectly encapsulates the late 80s and just how silly and wacky this had gotten. And I haven't listened to all the songs. I've listened to Do the Freddy, and it's a thing and a half. It's amazing. It's beautiful.
I'm Freddy, and this is for you.
We also had a Freddy Krueger hotline. Check this out.
If you're one of my lucky callers selected at random, you can talk to me live.
$2 the first minute, 45 cents each additional minute. Children, get your parents' permission before you dial.
Look, if they had done a Freddy Krueger sex hotline, I would not have been surprised at all. Now, I'm not exactly sure what this is supposed to advertise, whether it's the glove, the hat, or Freddy Krueger pajamas, or just a dress-up kit altogether. But Christian over at Planet CHH posted this the other day, and I actually had saved it in the assets for this video. So this came out around Nightmare on Elm Street 5, and you've got a cute cartoon-looking Freddy Krueger with, I think it's Japanese, it's a Japanese advertisement. You've got the kid there showcasing the Freddy Krueger dress-up kit, which again, it's just... it feels so wrong. Now, lastly, we're moving into bootleg territory, which nowadays fetches a very high price. Firstly, we're going to be talking about the Nightmare Freddy, not Freddy, Freddy doll. In terms of the origins of this, it's a little bit murky. I believe this was between 89 and 90 when this came out. Nowadays, on eBay, these fetch a pretty damn high price just because of the bootlegginess of it, but also the misspelling of Freddy as Freddy. I mean, look at this listing here on eBay. The condition is absolute shithouse, and they're asking $300 USD. And you know what? Someone will pay that. And last but not least, who could forget good old Sharp Hand Joe? This was released in, I believe, 1990 as like a Monsters line, much akin to like the Universal Monsters line with those particular characters, but they obviously couldn't get around the copyright issue of the IP of Freddy Krueger, so they changed the color of the sweater and just called him Sharp Hand Joe. I've seen so much lore behind this. The memes around this are amazing. The figure itself, if you can find it on eBay, which I can't at the moment, like Nightmare Freddy, it's in the bootleg realm, fetches a very high price. And I've seen people cosplay as Sharp Hand Joe. I've called people Sharp Hand Joe. I think it's the best bootleg name ever. Like, it's so far removed from Freddy Krueger. It's just incredible. And there you go, guys. Those are some wacky pieces of merchandise revolving around Freddy Krueger from the late 80s, early 90s. Again, I just really wanted to touch on that particular pocket of time because it was just a time to be alive. And just to go from a character that's so dark, disgusting, and twisted to a character that is showcasing yo-yos, a hotline, greatest hits album, and you can tell with Wes Craven in the documentary Never Sleep Again just how disgruntled he was, and I don't blame him. That's his baby. And to see it go from that where he had to relinquish the rights, the ownership of the character of Freddy, of A Nightmare on Elm Street, and just see it go through those stages of becoming a breakfast cereal mascot. Poor bugger. So guys, with that being said, drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts on some other obscure pieces of horror merchandise. Initially, I wanted to do a video covering Freddy, Jason, and Michael merchandise, but there wasn't much Michael and Jason merchandise around that time. I think because Freddy was such a breath of fresh air and had such a personality, he was marketable and then eventually became marketable to kids. It sounds so weird saying that, but hey, here we are. Love you guts, and I'll catch you in the next one.